Hey, it's David Weiner, writer and director of In Search of Darkness, 1990 to 1994, and you are listening to The Graveyard Show.
Welcome to The Graveyard.
And welcome to another edition of the Graveyard Show podcast. I am your caretaker, and the graveyard is open. Well, it's official. The graveyard has its latest edition, which is our latest puppy. Cujo the Third has finally arrived here at the graveyard, which means I am on puppy duty. So I will make this open very brief and get to our interview with the man you heard at the top of the show, friend of the program. He's been on the show many times. David Weiner is back. This time he's here to talk about his latest film, In Search of Darkness, 1995 through 1999. We'll talk about the second half of his 1990s horror super documentary, and we'll even look back at the first half of his documentary, In Search of Darkness, 1990 through 94, get some thoughts on that, and we will talk about that in just a moment. In the meantime, I just wanted to remind you that if you are not subscribing to the Graveyard Show podcast on YouTube, well, you should. There is tons of new videos up there all the time. That is where I'm spending most of my time nowadays. The podcasting is getting more and more infrequent, I should say. It's just not happening as much as it did when I restarted the show 5 years ago. However, the Graveyard Show podcast YouTube channel has tons of video content, including Catacombs of Horror, The Caretaker Reveals, and some shorts that I'm doing as well. Recently, I just uploaded several YouTube shorts. Van Helsing is a badass. So check that out. And make sure you like, subscribe, all that stuff. You know what to do. Check it out, Graveyard Show Podcast on YouTube. And you can find the Graveyard Show Podcast on several other video streaming platforms as well. While Cujo is taking zombie wrangling class, that gives me a second to step away and welcome a friend back to the program. As you hear in the background, well, a new grave is being added. And when that happens, that means my guest is here, and it's time for me to get to work. And a friend is back in the graveyard. Writer-director David Weiner is here to talk about the second part of his 1990s horror documentary, In Search of Darkness, 1995 through 99. David, great having you back on the program.
Always happy to be on the program, and you always save space for me in the graveyard, and I feel like it's home now. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It is kind of a double-edged sword on that one, I guess. Yeah. Well, it's a good thing for us because I love having you on the show. I know my listeners love listening to your interviews, and they certainly love everything the Creator VC is doing. First of all, I do want to congratulate you and the Creator VC team. For those that may not know, two of the Creator VC projects were nominated for Best Documentary at this year's Rondo Hatton Awards. Your film, In Search of Darkness, 1990 to 94, and then Aliens Expanded, which you were an executive producer on as well. That did win the Rondo Hatton Award for Best Documentary. Now, I know that wasn't the one you directed, but being an EP, I'm sure you were really thrilled as well. So congratulations. It has to feel good.
Thank you so much. It feels amazing. Listen, we were competing against ourselves, and I think that's probably the best worst case scenario, or the worst best case scenario. Either way, it's not. It's people traditionally when they get awards, they're like, well, it's just an honor to be nominated, and of course that's when they eventually don't win. But it's actually really, really nice when everyone gets nominated and no one wins, because you have that section of time where everyone's on an even playing field, just being recognized for their hard work.
Yeah.
So a nomination is really, really amazing. The Rondo Award, it's a small, the Rondo Hatton Classic Horror Awards is a smaller awards operation, but it's an absolutely crucial one in terms of recognizing a field that, other than maybe the Saturn Awards and the Fango Chainsaw Awards, no one pays attention to them, to horror.
Yeah.
And the genre essentially. So I think they've been doing it 23 years now, running, and it's an absolute honor to be nominated, and it's an absolute honor to win. And a quick shout out to, to Ian Nathan, his first documentary ever. He wins the Rondo. How cool is that? And of course, Robin Block running the show and the operation, and just the whole team at Creator VC who worked. It's very, very, very cool, and it's quite an honor. So thanks for singling that out.
Yeah. I felt the need to really mention that because I know everything that you guys do over Creator VC is really fantastic, and I know it's sort of a small operation, but you guys are really hitting all these beautiful marks in the horror and sci-fi communities. And I believe the first one was a gaming first-person shooter game. So I mean, there's a lot of documentaries out there that Creator VC is doing that so many of you are working so hard on, and I think it says a lot that both of those films were nominated for documentary. It says a lot for you and for Ian and for the Creator VC team. So I thought that's really fantastic. And getting back to really horror getting or horror being recognized, that's always a frustrating thing for me. Like when I look at the last couple of years and I look at like the Academy Awards and I see that there's a possibility of horror either getting nominated for some categories or not winning in categories. And I always look at it like, you don't have a lot of horror fans and a lot of sci-fi fans in these Academy voters. So, you don't really see them getting out and watching and supporting these films. And that's the frustrating part, I think, a lot of us in the horror community have with that, is that it's like, if you're going to have these movies and you really either separate them then and have them in their own category, or, there's something that's got to be done, because there is so much talent in the horror and sci-fi community, but I think people just sometimes look at it as it's just B-movie schlock.
Yeah, well, that and like mocap, motion capture. I every time Andy Serkis should have been nominated for a performance from Lord of the Rings or Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
He's an amazing actor, and he comes through on the motion capture. And it took so long for the Motion Picture Academy to sort of even figure out that was not a special effect.
Yeah.
Ooh. There we go. Yep. But I want to add also that Guillermo del Toro, when he won for The Shape of Water, he was really speaking for all of us. When he won, and he pretty much got up there and said, "This is for." I'm very much paraphrasing because I can't remember the specifics of what he said, but he said, "This is for the nerds. This is for the geeks. This is for the people who love and are passionate about genre film." And I talk about feeling seen. That and Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yes, I was just going to say, yes.
She won. But they're sort of the anomalies, and we're always going to be the outsiders, and we don't necessarily need to be part of that club. While
True.
It's always nice, it's all about the work, and it's all about our audience.
Yes. And we know how popular these genres are, and there's always a fandom that will always be there, not only supporting the past, but supporting the future. Now, speaking of past, before we get into your latest film, let's take a look back at In Search of Darkness, 1990 through 1994. Like it was
the Wayback Machine, all those years ago.
It looked like it was another big success for you and the Creator VC team. So what was the response like? What were you hearing? What was the feeling?
The response was really, 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 really positive. Maybe I sound slightly surprised because we were entering a new decade, and traditionally the 90s really are just kind of a lot more either diminished or outright dismissed by a lot of casual horror fans. That's why we're calling it the lost decade, because at least the first half of it, before Scream sort of showed up and sort of changed the game in terms of bringing horror really into the mainstream spotlight. The first half of the 90s, a lot of people are like, oh, gosh, I can't remember what came out, Or was that horror at all? Is Silence of the Lambs horror? That's a thriller. They're mostly thrillers, weren't there? So when people got to see this, and people were saying, wow, it's the longest one yet. And tap my veins, I want more and longer. I wish it was longer, and it's only the first half of the 90s.
Yeah.
That's wonderful validation. But a lot of people are really responding because a lot of the audience, their formative years were in the 90s. They were 90s kids or 90s teens who were really sort of learning all about the era and getting the opportunity and old enough to watch this stuff when we sort of herald the 80s as or 70s as like that. You and I, it's more. There's a whole '90s contingent of folks who really connect with it from a nostalgic lens, and so it was positive responses, and we're very happy about that.
Now, how are you finding that people are learning about these movies? Because I'm sure that there's word of mouth getting out there the more that you guys are doing. So how are you finding that they're discovering these?
The documentaries?
Yes.
Well, social media remains sort of the best way to go about it. Whenever we put one of these out, we do as much press as we can. We do, wonderful podcasts such as yours, but inevitably it comes down to a core group of extremely devoted fans and their word of mouth.
Yeah.
Because we're on a daily basis. We're posting on social media, even when we're not, campaigning for a sale for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So on a daily basis, if you're a horror fan, inevitably you will cross paths with the name, at the very least, of In Search of Darkness. But you'd be surprised. There's always people saying, gosh, I never heard of this. This sounds really good. And we've been doing this now since the release of the first one, which was in October of 2019. So all we could do is I was like this when I was with Famous Monsters. I was the editor of Famous Monsters magazine. And at the end of every single issue, I wrote a little thing that would just say, spread the word, incorporate pop culture conversation and monster, famous monsters, but just sci-fi, fantasy, horror in your daily pop culture conversations with friends, and spread the word. Because if you're not really talking about it along with your passion, as much as you'd like to with people that you normally wouldn't do that with, it really doesn't spread. So I firmly believe that word of mouth is the only way we could continue getting the word out there.
I think that's great advice, because it's true. If you're passionate, whether it's a movie, a genre, a band, an artist, if you're not putting the word out, then you're not really helping any of it at all.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, that billboard on Sunset Boulevard,
Mm-hmm.
someone already tagged it and put a devil face on my face. So I'm never going to do that again. No, I'm kidding.
Those damn kids and their graffiti. At one point, you had the In Search of Darkness parts 1, 2, and 3, the 1980s In Search of Darkness films. They were available on streaming. You did not do that with this first one. Was there ever discussion, or will there be any discussions about having these available on any streaming platforms?
Yeah. It's always a discussion, but those end up being the icing on the cake. So our format, as you know, is primarily crowdfunding, producing, manufacturing, and distributing ourselves with physical media.
Mm-hmm.
But you could always get digital copies at any given time. And when there's an arrangement like with Shudder, or we also sometimes distribute on the European circuit, on European television as well, like in France and Germany. There's always these things down the line. It's sort of way down the line that there's opportunities to sort of get it out there. And so we primarily, when we focus on making the movie, and we're only halfway through the 90s, we want to get it to the audience and make it available digitally, and then have the occasional flash sale.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's always conversation for more, but we don't have anything to announce just yet.
But we will have something to announce in a little bit regarding 1995 through 99 and how people could pre-order that film. We'll get into that in just a second. One of the things that I appreciated about 1990 through 94 was that it was familiar yet different. And what I mean by that is it was in the world of the 1980s In Search of Darkness films, but that film had its own identity. So was there an effort to make these feel slightly different?
Yeah, for the '90s, one of the things that was a real different thing. Maybe it's not radically different because if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Want to keep the structure the same, but I really wanted to integrate television. Stephen King miniseries and some, a whole chapter on horror TV in the '90s. That was important to sort of be able to expand in that because it was definitely part of everyone's experience in the '90s. And so, as we go into part two, I want to continue doing that, but I'm not going to be leaning into television because I once again find myself in my usual quandary of when I look at all the available movies that are available, there's not enough space to put in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I usually, unless it's something that I haven't touched on already in the previous, I'll just call it part one and part two of the '90s. In
Mm-hmm.
part one, I'm not gonna, unless I haven't touched on it already. I'm not gonna put it in part two with more time to it, just because there's so much going on. So I don't know if that sounds like a negative thing, but it's ultimately I have the best problem ever to have, and that's really figuring out what goes in. There's mainstream, there's indie, there's shot on video stuff that I think people like to explore and discover, but they also say, well, why didn't you put this? Because everyone loves this, or
Mm-hmm.
gosh, this is so obvious because it's a mainstream thing. Why wouldn't you put that in? But mathematically, as you know, when you put these movies together for each year when we curate it, so you've got now 95, 96, 97, 98, 99. Each year we can only fit about anywhere between 10 and 12, maybe 15 movies. And
Mm-hmm.
even if we put in 15 movies, the running time for each segment gets shorter and shorter. You can't have 5 minutes or 7 minutes per segment.
Yeah.
You can only sort of allocate that to chapters in between because literally, even without any choices made, mathematically, you're already flying
Yeah.
past 4 hours and
Yeah.
flying into 5 hours. And all I could say is this: here's the good thing. People really, really responded positively to the 6 hour with, including credits, the 6 hour running time. So I will not shy away, as usual, from an epic runtime
Yeah.
for the second part.
Well, I mean, yeah, I was just doing quick math while you were talking about it. If you did over 5 years, 10 movies each year, just minimum. So that's 50 movies. If you did 3 minutes for each of those 10 movies, that's a half an hour each year. That's 2.5 hours just at that small length. I mean, it's
Right, right.
impossible. You're so right, because even if you were to do 15 at 3 minutes, that's 45 minutes. So that's 90. That's, yeah. I mean, it's impossible. And like I always say, whenever it comes to lists or whenever it comes to anything like this, it's always about what's not on there. It's not about what's in there. And that always drives me nuts because people always complain. Well, like you were saying, it's like, well, why isn't this in there? Why isn't that in there? It's like, just be happy with what you have right here and appreciate everything that these people have put together for you. They just gave you a 5 hour, 6 hour documentary on a decade or half a decade. Be happy with that and say thank you and great work. I mean, it drives me nuts
Yeah.
sometimes. It really does, because there's always like these whiners out there. It's just like, stop it.
Yeah,
It's
I don't like to complain, but these are the comments I do get
yeah.
quite often when I can't believe in a 5 or 6 hour movie that they didn't include this, or they
Well,
didn't do a deep dive into that,
oh
and it
well.
was only surface level. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of the nature of the beast here. And listen, I cannot. It's the Abe Lincoln. You can't
Yeah.
please everyone all the time.
No.
And at the end of the day, I think this offers quite a bit for everybody,
Yeah.
and but it can't be everything to everyone.
No.
And
And
inevitably, just sorry,
no,
last
no.
thing I want to say is that I think everyone, the fact that people keep on coming back for more, saying I could watch this 24/7, when are you going to do the '70s? When are you going to
Yeah.
do the 2000s? When are you going to do the '30s? Whatever it may be, there is a demand for it, so much so that it sometimes surprises us how much people love these surveys. These are surveys,
Yes.
And I want to add one other thing, which I don't think is a brag. It's just a sort of factual statement. But I can't believe that I now have students who are in college coming to me asking for whether it's quotes or permission to use some of the films, but they use these in their their thesis about a certain element of decades horror or specific horror. And they use these as references. And in my wildest dreams, I never made these documentaries expecting to have college educated people using them as resource material.
Like, because they're so well done. They really are. I've said this in the past. I mean, these films are amazing. They really are. And I'm not saying that because you're here and because you've been on the show. I think that the work that you've done and the work that everybody has done on these movies is fantastic. I sit here and I watch them by myself and I'm applauding. Literally, I'm applauding. I love the opens to all these because I always get jacked up. It's just like, like I emailed you that time with Tony Todd in the open of part one. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is so perfect. Like, and I'm like, yay. And, the movie's done. I'm like, yay, this is so great. And I mean, these are fantastic. These are like the old Encyclopedia Britannicas. Like, I'm dating myself with this now. But it's like, people are going to come to these, and especially as time goes on and more young people find these, and you have more and more fans coming into the genres, they're going to find these movies and going to be like, this is awesome. If I was 14, 15 years old and I found these movies, I'd be gobbling them up, and then I'd be having my list going, I need to see this, I need to see this, I need to see that. Because,
And that's kind of what it comes down to for a lot of people is obviously it's more than that, but fundamentally, especially when you look at letterbox lists, and it's about curation, and it's about there's so much out there, I don't even know how to tackle this decade, or these filmmakers, or where to start. But I need some ideas. Well, I'll watch this. Or I'm interested in film and filmmaking and production war stories behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Whatever the genre is, I could watch this. That's cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Creative VC, you guys need to keep making these movies. You really do, because they are such a source material. I know it's I know it's tons of work. But at the end of the day, what you're putting together, what you are curating in these films, is not only a fantastic guide, but a time capsule as well. To be able to get people who worked on these movies, whether it was in front of the camera, behind the camera, wherever, that you have that now. So in 25 years, 40 years, people are watching these movies, and it's just like, wow, I'm listening to this person who was in this movie talking about it. It's stuff that we didn't get in the VHS days, with hearing like Boris Karloff talking about making Frankenstein while watching Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the kind of stuff that we would have craved. So you're able to provide that for fans now and forever. All this great stuff about, like, this is how this movie was made. This is the person who was in it. Here are the stories that they're going to tell you about it, and enjoy. And that's what I love about this. What was interesting was with the part one was that you focused on the films from each year as opposed to the 1980s doc, where you did the entire decade and then each sequential sequel, where each sequel then had more movies from those same years. Did you learn anything by putting together part one in the manner you did from 90 to 94 and including everything in those years?
Yeah, I feel like I can get a more expansive look, more expansive profile at the decade if I could dive in, right off the bat with 6 hours only covering half. So essentially, if you look at this is a In Search of Darkness movie that'll end up collectively, if you look at the entire decade, it's going to be a 11, 12 hour opus covering a decade, which is twice as long, more than twice as long as the other three individually.
Yeah.
So, it all come back to numbers, and you again look at, well, what didn't make it versus what did make it, or you weren't able to devote enough time that we wish you could have. But here's the thing: if you really are that interested, this should prompt you to do some of your own research. Watch the film, look for other interviews that spend more time about this stuff. They are out there, especially if you're a completist like me and you discover something and you want to find out more. I won't hold one documentary to task that for not giving me everything I need in one, mega download. I'll be like, oh, this is great. This got my piqued my interest. Now I can go out into the world and find more. Gosh, we all have the internet in our pockets.
Exactly.
So, if it's not enough for you, I hope it's prompting you to find out more.
Yeah, I mean, use those phones for more than taking photos and posting stuff. Go out there and actually like read stuff and research
Well,
stuff.
no, take your selfie and take a picture of your food first, and then take the time to go do it.
Exactly.
Priority.
In part one, you presented some films in there that I had no idea existed. Was there a fear that maybe you were going to go down the rabbit hole a little too far with some films, or were you confident that the ones you selected were going to hit the mark and pique people's interests?
I could tell you, I already, for every single one, once I start my process of writing the scripts for these things after I've done the interviews, I get so much amazing material that I can't fit it in. And even if I'm fitting in the best stuff, I still have to tell a logical evolutionary tale within each segment, whether it's a 3 minute, 4 minute, 5 minute segment, or, pushing to 6 or 7, which is rare, but some movies really deserve that. But at the end of the day, for every single thing I wrote too much, and I could barely contain myself to cut it down because it was just painful for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, if anything, when you look at what's ultimately there, you've got something that provides enough information and moves briskly. But I guarantee you, there was more there that I had to cut, and it was painful.
Better to have too
I
much
don't know
than
if
not
that answers
enough.
your question. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
It's
you
okay.
know,
It's a great it's a great answer regardless, because it just goes to show you, right, that even someone who is a professional writer can realize when they've written too much, and it's hard to edit yourself because you look at it and you go, "This is all important."
yeah, that's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head. You get carried away because you're like, well, you got to include that. You got to include that. And then you literally put together something that you wanted to just, again, back to the mathematics of the whole thing. I wanted to keep it, at say 4 minutes, maybe 4.5 minutes, because, when you're adding clips, it
Oh,
adds
hang on
time.
1 second. I am getting an alert. Hang on. Wow. Okay, I just got an alert. We stopped the alert. I'm sorry, David. Go ahead.
No worries, no worries. Listen, life gets in the way, right?
Indeed.
Life finds a way, if we're talking Jurassic Park. But yeah, you really hit the nail on the head in the fact that when you're script writing these things, you want to include so much amazing stuff, and I will get carried away. And sometimes, with all the material that I put in, even though mathematically, when I start a segment, I really want to keep it to about 4.5 minutes with clips and stuff like that. I will just say, well, it's killing your darlings, right? I don't want to. This is a great fact. This fact is a great thing. This is a great quote from this person, but something's got to give. Something's got to give. And so at the end, I really do. I make things probably a minute or two or three or four too long, and then I have to just sort of trim it down. And it's like when you have a wedding. When you have a wedding and you wanted everyone to have the roast beef and the top sirloin, but all they have is the meatloaf. And so you're like, well, listen, they came to the wedding to enjoy us getting married, not for the top sirloin. So they'll get meatloaf, and I'll just have to live with it.
Exactly. You just took me
I think
back.
that was a bit of a damning analogy, but
But one that many of us can understand and appreciate. Let's turn our attention to part two. So, how far along are you on the film, and what is the rough expected release date?
the rough expected release date is tail end of this year. We always have an October campaign, and then deliver the film digitally in November. The labor sort of tail end of November, and then it'll ship by probably February or March of 2026. So these are the projected and expected dates, barring any catastrophes. But ultimately, we're on track. I am deep into production now. I just had a couple of really good interviews with some names I don't want to reveal,
Yep.
but I just had a 3.5 hour interview just yesterday
Wow.
with an amazing screenwriter, and I'm getting some amazing stuff. Well, I'll say something that's really cool is I get to bounce around again all over the map to get the people I want to talk to. So I talked to someone in New York City the previous week. I'm talking to someone in Rome
Wow.
on Sunday, simply because this director is shooting in Paris and Rome on a contemporary TV show, and so but he's making time for me. So I got to catch him while he's at his Rome hotel, and so we're going to do that on Sunday.
Oh,
Knock on
nice.
wood that it doesn't fall through.
That's
But
yeah.
and then yesterday I was talking to someone in Texas. So
Jeez.
it's a very cool world we live in now, where if I can't be there in person all the time, which I try to be,
Yeah.
I can at least jump on, get a local camera person to shoot it, and I'll do the interview live through, Zoom or Google Meet.
Sure.
I used to use Skype, but they got rid of Skype.
Oh, yeah.
So I like Google Meet. I'm going to plug Google Meet
All
because
right.
it's really easy.
There you go. That's good. All right, Google Meet it is. Creator VCs, you mentioned, sends out questionnaires to fans to get their input. Without giving anything away, which I know you're really great at not doing, were there any surprises in this year's submissions?
I am always impressed by the deep cuts that select people will offer up that make me say, gosh, I haven't heard of that, or I didn't even think that that was a consideration to include. It might be sort of a genre straddling title. I absolutely value the surveys that people fill out, where they talk about everything from chapter topic suggestions to merch that they'd like to see when we put these swag, packages together with the Blu-ray, and then of course content-wise, in terms of the material we're doing. There's I inevitably have to go with a consensus, but there are also times where I'm just like, I can't pass this up. This is a great idea. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm glad someone cares about this enough to say, you should definitely do this. This is my number one choice. And I'm like, I agree. And more people should learn about it. Thank you, person, who filled out the survey.
That's great.
So I find in incorporating our community to be part of the process of making these documentaries by filling out a survey and sharing their desires of what they would like to see in the ultimate documentary about an era that they love so much. It's not editing by committee. It's like a brain trust of the greatest horror fans and minds who say, boy, you really should do this, and so I find it incredibly helpful and a wonderful resource.
I love it. See, folks, they do listen to you. So this isn't just something where they're like, here, send us a questionnaire, and they throw them out, which is fantastic.
I'm tapping their phones, too. I should have said that.
There you go. Get all that information as you possibly can. So you focused, part one, obviously, was on the first half of the decade. Now you're doing the second half of the decade in part two. Would you say that there were differences in how horror was presented from the early part of the decade to the latter part of the decade?
Yeah, there was a definite evolution. I think the first half of the decade, and that's something we explore in the first part, was horror really trying to find its footing and its identity in the wake of the 80s, which really kind of stole the spotlight and was sort of the golden age of horror for many. So in the 90s, there's sort of this balance with the carryovers, the Pinheads and the Michael Myers and the Jason and Chucky, but you've got an influx of new villains, Candyman or Hannibal Lecter, or now we've got Wishmaster in the second half. Mm-hmm. But I would say the second half of the 90s, in terms of the industry trends, Scream really did change the game, because that wasn't even expected to do that well. It was just, the next Wes Craven movie. But by that time, meta filmmaking, meta storytelling, self-reflexive storytelling, grittier type of movies like Seven were incredibly influential. And when Hollywood was taking note and saying, we got to have more like this. Scream Count came out in 96, and in 97, but especially 98, there was just a massive influx of teen-driven and young slasher horror, and everything was meta, So whether it was Bride of Chucky or Idle Hands, or disturbing behavior, or of course, I Know What You Did Last Summer, because Kevin Williamson had become an absolute force to be reckoned with. That the whole industry really was driving towards, Scream was driving the second half of the decade. Now, of course, there's much more than Scream, and this documentary isn't about Scream, solely. There was a lot of innovative indies that in the wake of Quentin Tarantino's, Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, everyone wanted to be like Tarantino, and indie filmmakers were all getting attention that they never got before. Oh, rather than a B movie straight to the video store, you're actually an auteur. I want to see your next film, and did it play at Sundance? That's how sort of the game changed in the 90s.
Yeah.
And of course, you have at the tail end in '99, you have movies like The Sixth Sense, and you had Blair Witch, two entirely different movies, but both ruled the box office for different reasons. So whether it was found footage or sort of a back to basics, character-driven study where you have a big twist at the end, again, Hollywood was taking note, and audiences were eating it up just based on word of mouth. So horror was back in good stead, in the second half of the 90s, where it was still the redheaded stepchild, where they'd rather call it a thriller than horror in the first half.
Yeah. It's amazing because I think of Blair Witch, and that marketing campaign was second to none. That was amazing. That was better than those 70s cannibal movies by far.
Marketing campaign. I thought that these were actually lost people in some woods, and they found the footage. And
it's like
you're talking about the commercial. This is crass commercialization of three people who disappeared.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I have to correct myself. I apologize. Yes, I shouldn't be making light of that situation. Well, it's funny because you mentioned Scream, and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and it's so true. It's like, we think about 80s horror being so influential, but the Scream series is still going on. You have the new I Know What You Did Last Summer reboot or remake or continuation happening. Candyman sequel came out not too long ago. You have even discussions now with Gillian Anderson. I just saw talked about Ryan Coogler should do the X-Files reboot. And,
an X-Files reboot. I even read that Idle Hands was being remade as well. I think
okay.
Wolfhard wants to remake it.
Okay. And then, the Buffy, they keep talking about Buffy possibly getting, restarted as well. So it's amazing, you talk about the 80s, the 90s are very much alive and well in present day as well.
And I think we should point a spotlight on Sinners, because Sinners is an original idea. Now, if you really look at Sinners, which I think is an amazing movie and one of the best things I've seen in quite some time, you could see influences on its sleeve, like From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yep.
I mean, this is a movie that there are people who go into this theater thinking that it's one thing, and they what? This is a vampire movie? Holy crap!
I know, right? I said to a friend, I'm like, is it bad that I was kind of disappointed that it became a vampire movie? I don't know. I mean, I loved it as a vampire movie, but that movie could have worked in so many different ways. I mean, it's incredible.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, really.
Well, it's kind of like Godzilla -1. I like it.
Yes.
I think those two movies are very similar.
Yes.
Of course, stylistically and content very different, but they're both movies where if there were no monsters, you would not miss the monsters.
Yes.
Because you care about the human drama and the situation and the plight.
Yeah.
And so, it's almost as if, like, when I was watching Godzilla -1, which I absolutely loved, and I absolutely was happy and wanted it to be a Godzilla movie. When Godzilla would enter the scene every now and then, I'd be like, "Whoa, wait! This is killing the vibe. This is bad. This is bad for these people." I mean, you weren't used to caring about the people who get stomped on in a Godzilla movie, pretty much ever.
I know, right? I keep telling people, I'm like, you have to see it. You have to see it. And they kind of roll their eyes. I'm like, no, it's not guys in playing dress up in monster costumes and battling each other. I'm like, this is a real solid story and a real human story. I'm like, it's like, go see it. Don't deny that.
It's the only Godzilla movie that'll make you cry, other than
oh my God,
Godzilla on Monster Island going fishing with his son.
I'm telling you, I was in the theater, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't think I've ever cried this much in a movie, let alone I can't believe I'm doing this at a Godzilla movie.
But I totally steered your conversation away,
Oh
and I
no.
would say that contemporary films owe a lot to the '80s and very much the '90s
Yeah.
as well. And the second half of the '90s, in a nutshell, encapsulation. I think a big defining element of it is that the studios realized that horror was okay and could sell, you could make big bucks, especially if you pack all their movies with the stars of Friends and Dawson's Creek.
Yeah.
And so these horror movies were arguably not so much about horror. They were a good time at the movies with
Yeah.
a couple scares.
Yeah, exactly.
And could bring in the mainstream audience that normally would steer clear of something that's called
Yeah.
a horror or a slasher.
My only criticism of, well, not the only, but I mean my biggest criticism of 90s horror is those terrible movie posters. There's so many
Yep,
bad ones.
yep.
And I've had this conversation on this podcast many times about them, and they all look like headshots. And it's like,
well, they're the Photoshop,
Yeah.
that they did in an afternoon. They're like, make sure you put all these faces in these pictures, and there's
Yeah.
nothing left but put them in dark or in shadow.
Yeah.
I think two posters stand out to me. There's definitely more than just two, but in the first half of the '90s, the Sleepwalkers poster, Stephen King's Sleepwalkers by
Yep.
Mick Garris, that was on my wall in the early '90s,
Okay.
and it remains one of my favorite posters just for any horror movie. It's a great atmospheric shot, a haunted house and cats, essentially.
Yep.
It's really good. And in the second half, I would say the Event Horizon poster
Yeah.
is really great.
Yes.
Because there are no human faces. You could sell Larry Fishburne and Sam Neill on there, but no, it's the Event Horizon in front of Neptune and a big bolt of lightning. It says what? Infinite terror. Infinite
Yeah.
space, infinite terror. I think it says. Don't quote me exactly, but it's a great poster because it evokes interest and
Yeah.
imagination, and that's another poster that hung on my wall, if I may say so.
I actually just popped that into the DVD player or the Blu-ray player not too long ago. I was watching that. It's so good. Oh my gosh.
Well, that's another movie that sort of fits in the From Dusk Till Dawn sinners category for the uninitiated. Because I mean, when I first saw that, I didn't see all the trailers. I was just like, this looks amazing. I saw part of the trailer once. It's clearly a descent into darkness. They really sold it that way.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that they would go straight to hell, Hellraiser style.
Yes.
Like I remember it took such a pivot when you got, spoiler alert, you got like Sam Neill scratching out his own eyes and
Yes.
smiling. It's like, oh my God, what am I watching?
He's in a lot of great horror movies. He's so underrated as a horror, as an actor, but as a horror actor, the performances he's done, I mean, it's just incredible. It's incredible.
Oh yeah, well, and of course he's also in the Mouth of Madness
Yeah.
as well. A lot of people think that's '94.
I made that mistake too.
On IMDb, it says, I made that mistake too. And as I was making '90 to '94, the way I lay out all the movies is because there's just so many distribution dates, whether it's a festival, whether it's opening weekend, whether it's the wide release, whether it's the video release. Whether it's in a foreign country or domestic, they're just all over the map. And the only way I decided, going back to the first documentary, was I will just stick with one consistency, and that'll be just the American release date, and in theaters or on video if it went straight to video. And there are some where they didn't come to America until many years later, even like in the following decade. That's the only time that I'll say, all right, I'll go for their international country date, the Italian release date or the Japanese release date. So, you look at here's the thing that's tricky with IMDb. It'll say the year it was made, and oftentimes released. But fundamentally, if you look at the release date, like you go to In the Mouth of Madness on IMDb, it says came out in 1994. But if you look at you scroll down, click the release date, it'll say that it was in early '95, and it gives the date. And so there you go.
That was my
I catch
mistake.
flack for that kind of stuff too. Why didn't they
Yeah.
do In the Mouth of Madness? They're
Yeah.
not going to do that.
Yeah,
You know.
when I put my video together for films for the part 1, I had that in there, and I was like, oh darn it! So I had to put it in part 2. So there you go. I'm going to get that movie in there one way or the
I
other.
mean, who cares at the end of the day
Right.
except the uptight geeks like us who want to be right about it? But
Exactly.
ultimately, did it come out in the '90s? Yes, it did.
Yes.
You know, it's all right.
Exactly.
We're off by a year. That's okay.
Yeah, it fits. It fits in the
Casually
documentary.
Yes.
By the way,
But for the documentary, I do take that stuff very seriously. So that's why sometimes people have to wait.
yeah, of course. Speaking of movie posters, I love the poster for this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
It is so good.
Dave Morrell. Dave Morrell is the incredibly talented artist who does our main posters. He's been doing it ever since In Search of Darkness Part 2. He also did In Search of Tomorrow, but Robin comes up with a concept that he works with Dave Morrell on, and they sketch it out, and they come out with a variety of ideas. And then we bring it to our collective, and we say, how can we improve this? What can we add? What Easter eggs can we add? What can we do to make this amazing? And I think he really outdid himself this time with the school hallway with 1,000 Easter eggs in the hallway and the open locker.
Yeah.
Really captures the sort of the teen-driven spirit of the second half of the '90s. And if you haven't seen it, obviously we're just talking about it. Seek it out. It's so good.
It
and
really
then we
is.
always have a second one, so you're going to see a second one very soon.
Okay.
Because Clayton Benge, our creative director, always does the kid in front of the TV that's surrounded by the villains and creatures of the era. And so I think everyone is really going to love the evolution that he does for 95 to 99.
I can't wait.
It's chef's kiss.
It really. That's what I mean. I'm not lying when I say all the work that everyone does there is so good, because everyone brings their expertise and professionalism to it, and the love and the caring and the respect for the genres. It really is. It's like, like you say, for us geeks out there, it's just like you look at that and you're like, yes, this is exactly. Even the case, the case that you came out with for the 3 In Search of Darkness movies, 1, 2, and 3. I looked at that thing and it was like, this is so well made and just so beautiful. Like, it's just a work of art within itself.
Are you talking about the black one?
Yes.
The black one?
Yes.
Yeah. Clayton made that as well.
Fantastic, really is. It's you're here to talk also about the pre-order. So,
yes.
What can you tell us about pre-ordering In Search of Darkness 1995 to 1999?
Well, what I could say is this is the pre-order for the movie that is still in production, but you get to jump in early, get your name in the credits. Go to 90shorrordoc.com, 90shorrordoc.com. And if you go there, you'll see all the cool little details and swag that we offer, and the various packages and upgrades and t-shirts. And so you get posters and you get t-shirts and you get certificates, all sorts of stuff. Each time, we do a lot of similar things with each sale, so we try and mix it up every single time to make it cooler and better. So we're doing that this time around. What's cool about this time around also is when you're pre-ordering, is that if you did miss In Search of Darkness 90 to 94, you can get that either solo or you can get it as a package with a slipcover with 95 to 99. So you can have the whole 90s on your shelf and your name in the documentary. There's so much more. You also get access to Q&As. It's sort of a condensed running time. Usually we do these pre-orders a year ahead, and we have sort of a year long of sort of live events and stuff like that. But you get that as well, but this time it's a little more condensed because, of course, we're going out in October with the final sale, if all goes according to plan.
Perfect. And they can go to 90shorrordoc.com to get more information on that. The packages, the different tiers are always fun. They really are. There's great stuff. I know in the past you get digital copies of not only the movie but the soundtrack, or the two different soundtracks. You could also get Yeah.
Sorry, I'm totally interrupting you.
Oh no.
The Dream Invaders that did part one are back for part two, and they just do an amazing job. Alex Townley, who edited the first one, he's back to do part two. So glad and appreciative that he's doing yet another knock it out of the park job on the second, part of the 90s. We've got the dream team putting this stuff together.
Yeah.
Whether the merch look amazing, making the film look amazing, and we're a small team, as I've said, so it's very cool that we could get to accomplish so much with so little. But I think the reason why we can do that is we don't have all these executives
Yeah, exactly.
hampering us,
Yes.
along the way, gatekeeping every little thing and trying to put their mark on stuff. That's why things take a million years to finish.
Yeah.
At the studio level.
Yeah. Well, also really quickly too, the pre-order time periods from May 15th through June 9th, correct?
That is correct. May
Okay.
15th through June 9th. So that's the time. And spread the word and go to the socials. The socials are 80s Horror Doc, 80s Horror Doc on Instagram and Twitter X and Facebook. You can sort of see everything that we're doing. We're revealing some of the talent that are going to be in this movie. We're definitely not going to reveal everyone because we're still shooting. So.
Yeah.
But there's some good stuff. If you want me to list a couple, I could say.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not going to say no. Sure.
Let's see. I have to see who we've revealed, so I don't reveal things.
Of course.
Me.
Yeah.
Loose lips sink ships. But Paul W.S. Anderson talking about Event Horizon, the director of Event Horizon. We've got Andrew Devoff, the Wishmaster himself.
Wow.
Super cool, really great guy. They're all great guys, but when you talk to a villain, you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And, listen, when in horror, you'll find that the ones who play the most dastardly villainous people on screen are absolute pussycats in real life, just good human beings. Steven Weber, who starred as Jack Torrance in the Shining miniseries, and of course we saw him in Mel Brooks' Dracula Dead and Loving It. That was really fun because he's a total monster kid, and you'd never guess because he's got the comedy pedigree.
Sure, yeah.
And Eduardo Sanchez, the co-director of Blair Witch Project,
nice.
is on. I'll just leave it there.
Okay, yeah, that's perfect.
That's a good taste,
because my favorite thing too has always been the first movie that you show in all the movies, in all the documentaries. I always love to see like what that first film's going to be from from that first year of the decade, and it's always that's another fun thing. I love the surprises. I'm one of those people that's just like, I don't need to know everything going in. I prefer to know less. So this is great. This is fantastic.
And I'll say lastly, one other thing. When I did all of the interviews that I did for In Search of Darkness 90 to 94, for those who had movies in the second half, I did the double duty. So I sat down with John Carpenter. So John Carpenter's going to be in this.
Yep.
I didn't say, well, let's talk about body bags. All right, good to see you. I'll see you later.
Yeah.
Yes. What did John Carpenter do in the latter half of the 90s now that we realize that Mouth of Madness actually came out in 95?
Yeah.
Both that and his Village of the Damned remake came out.
Yep.
John Carpenter's Vampires.
Yep.
It's just it's very cool to have a lot of the folks who really made quite an impact and are great personalities talking about the movies that they love as well in the first half. Many of them return for part two to continue the tale.
Which is great. Just for the record, my 5 picks were In the Mouth of Madness. These aren't anything out there. I mean, these are all pretty safe. In the Mouth of Madness, Tales from the Hood, The Craft, Event Horizon, and Halloween H2O, with honorable mentions going to The X-Files, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Audition. So there you go.
Yes. Very cool.
Yes.
Very cool. Audition.
Yes.
If anyone has not seen Audition, go see Audition.
Oh God.
And that's another one. That's another
Yes.
one. Like there's a running theme here of movies in that era where the filmmaker presents you with one thing and then pulls the rug right out from under you.
Yes, it was on, I think, one of the streamers, and it was the last 15 minutes, and I was like, oh God,
You can't look away, but
God.
you can't look at the same time.
Exactly. Well, David, as always, this was fantastic. This was a lot of fun, and this,
Absolutely.
as like many of our interviews, it just flew by. I can't believe we've been talking for almost an hour, so I'm going to let you go. And as always, thank you so much for joining us here in the Graveyard. We cannot wait to see In Search of Darkness, 1995 through 1999. Good luck with putting the rest of that film together, and can't wait to have you back in the Graveyard again.
Thank you. Thank you. Always happy to be here, and spread the word, everybody. May 15th to June 9th at 90shorrordoc.com. Tell your friends.
And as I put this interview to rest, it's always great to have David on the show. We always have such a great time talking, and I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate the work that they're doing there at Creator VC. I mean, the work that David has done with these 80s and 90s documentaries is just second to none. I mean, they're fantastic. And if you're not familiar with these films and you're just learning about them and you want to hear more from David and you want to hear more from other people from Creator VC like Robin Block and Weary Pines, who scored the 1980s In Search of Darkness movies, or Ian Nathan, who we mentioned for Aliens Expanded. He was here actually talking about that film as well. You can take a look right here. If you're listening to it on the podcast, just go back a few tombstones, you'll find them. If you're on YouTube, there is an actual entire In Search of Darkness wing right here. You can just go down there and check it out. All the interviews with David Weiner, Robin Block, Weary Pines, Ian Nathan are all there, and you can go through all the different movies. And if you have Shudder, In Search of Darkness Part 3 is still on there. I did see that as of this taping. So you can check that out at least. And you can also go to creatorvc.com and you can see everything that they're doing there as well. And again, a reminder that the pre-orders for In Search of Darkness 1995 through 99 goes from May 15th through June 9th. So that's where you can order or pre-order the film, and you can see the different tiers that are available for you at different rates. I know it goes from the basic sort of Blu-ray version, and then there's like the Blu-ray with the digital. Normally I would go through all of the options, but due to recent circumstances, I just don't really have that kind of time. So check it out, Creator VC, but you want to go to 90shorrordoc.com, 90shorrordoc.com. You can go right now, and you'll see all the different tiers that you can that are available for you to purchase. And there are others that in the past have had shirts. There are others in the past where you can get the soundtrack. There's in the past they've had associate producer credit where you can get your name as an associate producer on the film. They had an executive producer one. They have all different kinds of stuff. So check it out, 90shorrordoc.com. For In Search of Darkness, 1995 through 1999. And as David also mentioned, you can also, while you're pre-ordering Part 2, you can get Part 1 if you have not gotten it yet. And you can also check out 80shorrordoc.com as well. I believe that's where you can get In Search of Darkness Part 1, 2, and 3, all about 1980s horror. And again, if you're not familiar with those movies, you're going to really be very happy when you start watching them. Like I told David, it's the fastest 5 hours I've ever spent watching a movie. They go by so quickly. All right, I'm going to get out of here so I can... Oh, I see Cujo is done with zombie wrangling class. So that's my time to get out. And as you exit the graveyard, I would like to remind you to please lock the gate behind you. We wouldn't want anyone to get out. Until Cujo, drop it. Cujo, drop it. Drop it. Is that a hand? Until next time. Whose hand is this? Hope it's not David's. That would be awkward. Well, I see we have a lot more training to do.